What's going on YouTube? It's your boy CJ3 Day, aka the Gym Slasher, back at it again. Could have been anywhere in the world. You chose to be here with me, and I appreciate it. Without further ado, let's get right into work. The NCAA transfer portal. Good, bad, your thoughts. It's layered. And I think if you're hearing a lot and you're going to hear this is why we're talking about it, because it's a hot topic, especially always at the end of the season. Because you got the NFL draft that's going to be coming up. You got obviously the college football season coming to a close. So coaches are moving around from the NFL to the college. Players are wanting to move around depending on the outcome of the games and season and where their coaches are at. So the transfer portal is a hot button. It's a hot topic. So that's why we're on it. I think if anyone just say it's good or it's bad, and that's it, is doing a disservice to people that just want to have a better understanding of what the transfer portal is, what it's about, what does it serve, and then obviously the pros and cons to it. And I think given that education on it, or given a backdrop on it, perhaps have a better understanding of where you are in terms of how you look at it or how you perceive it. So with that, for myself, that's where my lane is at. I overall believe that the transfer portal is a good thing for the athlete, for the colleges, both, right? I think the reason why I say that, I think we have to come to an understanding, right? And what we have been seeing for a long time is now out in the forefront because of this. And that is, we now understand that college amateurism is no longer there. And it hasn't been there for a long time, to be honest. We just are now saying the quiet part out loud. There have always been dealings and money involved. I wouldn't say always, but I would say for the last 40, 50 years, there have been some type of money transferring in terms of colleges, players, coaches, boosters, alumni, because the college football game is highly competitive. Everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to win championships. Everybody wants to win games. 10-win games are a big deal in college. 11-win games, 12-win games are a big deal in college. Big money in college across the board, particularly in the southern region of college football and in the Midwest, because that's really the birth of football. And it's still prevalent in California, but not as quite as you're talking about your Texases of the world, your Oklahomas, your Ohio, your Penn States, your Floridas, your Georgias, and in there, Nebraska's, even in those Midwest, it's football and it's nothing else a lot of the times. But now, as the transfer portal, I think people have to understand, I'm going to break something down in that, all right? The transfer portal is where it came from, was the transferring process, where it was always eligible for, the eligibility for an athlete to transfer to another school. Now that's in my era of when I was playing college football, college sports as a college athlete in the 2000s, and even before that, and obviously beyond until the transfer portal came in. The transfer portal, or transferring, a lot of times if you're in the NCAA, you transfer and you had to sit out a year. And essentially, the NCAA rule view that as you getting familiar with the next school that you're in. Well, there's an immediate contradictory to that, because if you're a freshman and I come in and I transferred as let's just say I'm a sophomore and I transfer to a different school. So I was in this school as my freshman, as my freshman year, and I was there in my sophomore year. So me transferring, right? What experience do I need? I've already been in college. And then how as a freshman, they could get recruited in and be ready to play and acclimated into the school. But I've been in school for 2 years. You understand it's an embedded contradictory. So it didn't quite make a whole lot of sense in that aspect of it. There's some other things, that was in part of it, but that was one of the major questions that was like that was kind of just don't make sense. It doesn't fly quite well. Then you also had where a athlete that wanted to transfer, he had to put a clause in, or there was a clause that said he could not, or she, for that matter, the student athlete couldn't transfer within the same conference. They couldn't, if they were at Ohio State, they couldn't go to Michigan, or if they was in Michigan, they couldn't go to, Penn State or Michigan State, or SEC. If you was transferred from Alabama, you couldn't go to Georgia, so forth and so forth. That was really prevalent. So the transfer would really hamper the athlete to not allow them to go to places. And the biggest contradictory of that was college head coaches. They leave at the end of the season or pretty much at the tail end of the season, and they're welcome to go wherever their money or where they're offered a position at. They can't go from Alabama to Georgia. They can't go from Ohio State to Penn State or Penn State to Michigan. They can do that, but yet the athlete can't. And these contradictories over the years have was just too loud to ignore, and the hypocrisies of those. So there you can see the birth of the transfer portal. The other biggest thing in NIL deals with the transfer portal and the NIL deal was the amount of money the college football was bringing in. Now with social media, with TVs, with all this knowledge that we all have at the hands of us, we can have access to all kinds of information, and the information was too loud to ignore. Colleges are making it, there's ample colleges are making a lot of money. College coaches are making a lot of money. The schools from football, and particularly football, that are building campuses all over across America with, from the money that they got from football and bowl games and championships and endorsements and all of this. And then you're telling these collegiate athletes to just figure it out on their college scholarship, if they have one, and, work on campus and get pennies on a dollar. It's hard to ignore when they're seeing their jerseys. If, it may not have their name on it, but we know that jersey, who was playing in that jersey, who's playing in that number on the field, right? Their Heisman Trophy, or their Biletnikoff Award, or Doak Walker, and whatever. And they can't even get paid off of that. The name, image, and likeness, that's what the NIL is allowing that athlete to get paid off of their likeness. That doesn't necessarily mean the college is paying them. They're just getting what they're worth as being profiled, prolific athletes that's out here on TV, and people know them and know their names, and then they're able to capitalize on that. I don't have zero problems with that. They're adults, and they're in free enterprise world in terms of capitalist society. And I brought this up before. We are in a capitalist society, and you make as much money off of yourself as you can with, in terms of that, in relation to college football or college sports, because everybody else is getting paid. The commentators, the media pundits, the coaches, the president, the boosters, everyone got their hand in the pot. And I don't have a problem with the athlete having their hand in the pot and doing that. I think the biggest thing is the con to it is the amount of, right now we're at its cowboy phase. It's just wild, wild west. Everybody's just moving and jostling around and getting money thrown to them and moving here and moving there and all of that. And that, I can see where the messiness is coming from. And I believe that there should be some kind of rules in place. I don't necessarily know about a cap. I don't want to put a salary cap or a cap on how much you can make, because if you can make as much money off yourself in this world, try to do it in terms of reasonable. It's not hurting anybody else. If you are making that money on you, I don't have a problem with that. I don't want us to necessarily put a cap on, but however somebody's willing to pay for your services, that's how it is. It's supply and demand at its finest. You're learning that. But I think as players are understanding this, you're starting to see institutions apply school or curriculum to understanding money and leverage and power and negotiations and contracts, which I think is great for the young athletes. So if they're fortunate enough to make it to the professional level, they now have more of a professional mindset to understand contracts as opposed to never touching any kind of money or any type of major money. They're 4 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years of college. They get to their first contract negotiation in the NFL or in Major League Baseball or NBA, and it's all foreign to them, where they could sign a bad deal. Now they have experience in understanding how to sign deals and sign contracts and how percentages go and taxes and all that. So when they go into the NFL now, they understand a little bit more, have a better understanding, especially those top flight athletes. They now have a better understanding on how to negotiate, what money is, how taxes work. How do you deviate money? How do you do a buyout? How do you can cancel or an expiring contract? So you start having under these understandings where now these athletes have a little bit more education to that. The other thing is this: colleges and athletes now, colleges are actually now starting to see some benefit into the transfer portal and into the NIL. You're starting to see some benefit to these colleges because now you have colleges who may not have had the chance before have chances now to put their name in the game. By, you see in the Texas Techs of the world, Indiana, even though they had a lot of 3 stars and 2 stars and stuff like that, but they're using some of that money to put their name in the game. And if you're winning, athletes are going to follow. Like I've said in the previous videos before, athletes are going to follow where there's wins and everything. But with the transfer portal, you getting these colleges are starting to be in the play, and the athletes are willing to stay either in college in general, just stay in college and not just forego in the draft. But you're also seeing them stay in school because guess what? They don't have to worry about money now. A lot of kids were leaving, trying to get to the league as fast as possible to the NFL or to the NBA or to Major League Baseball or, whatever other respective sport. But now if you already starting to get paid in college and still have the college experience, you're getting essentially two of the best of both worlds in that sense. And as a person that was in college, graduating college, there's an incentive to want to stay in college, especially if they're giving you millions of dollars to stay as opposed to going into the pros. That bring the other aspect in it. And I was mentioning this a little bit, that the NFL can potentially have a problem because now you're starting to see top tier quarterbacks or top tier players paying attention to the NFL draft and where certain franchises are being slotted in the NFL draft, like first pick, second pick, third pick, fifth, fourth, fifth picks. Some of those franchises aren't good franchises in terms of how their administration is built and everything. And right now, the glaring one that people are pointing out is allegedly they're pointing out is the New York Jets. And there's players who are being very hesitant and want to be drafted by them because they don't believe that their business structure is set, and they're willing to stay another year in college to avoid playing for that type of franchise. And this has happened before the transfer portal. John Elway was one of the most famous quarterbacks or athletes to say, I would rather play another year than to play what I think the Chargers was going to, I think it was the Chargers or somebody that was going to draft him, and he didn't want to have nothing to do with it. We've seen Eli Manning go through that. He didn't want to get drafted by a certain school, and he was willing to stay in for another year if that meant get drafted by another franchise, NFL franchise, if that meant he can avoid that school. This has happened. Phillip Rivers, I think, was one of them that was also part of that. This happens. This is not nothing new. But now the difference is they have a lot more leverage. They could sit because now they're getting paid. Before it was like, man, you're going to sit and lose all that money just to get to the league and get to the NFL. You're going to risk getting injured, but you ain't getting paid. You're going to go. Now these athletes are now getting paid in college. They're getting paid for their name, image, and likeness in college. They can transfer to another school and get paid even more from another school. And if that means them staying to avoid that particular franchise, they can do it. That is big. That is paramount. That's something that we haven't seen in terms of now you're seeing collegiate athletes having more leverage and more voice into where they want to go. And so NFL, by problem, I'm saying that this is going to be kind of unique for them to figure out how they want to combat that. Because if you're a bad franchise or a franchise that just didn't have a good year for whatever reason, and teams or players are willing to stay to avoid you, you got a bigger problem on your hands in terms of how can we negate that? How can we incentivize these athletes to come out at the time they're doing? You're starting to see this is really beneficial for college basketball. Now you're starting to see the biggest argument for the last 25 years, 30 years, really LeBron era, Kobe era, KG era of all these kids are leaving too early, and too many young kids are in college or in the pros now. They don't understand. Now you're seeing some of these top flight athletes and basketball players going, you know what, I'll play another year because I'm getting paid now. I'm getting that money now, and I could develop and I could stay. I may not want to go to the NBA now. I can forego that and stay another year. Well, if you're like those basketball blue bloods like Kansas, Duke, North Carolinas of the world, you're elated by that, right? Because now you can potentially have a kid and you maybe be one and done. Now they're staying a year, 2 years, or that basketball athlete that might have been on the fringe of, as a sophomore, junior, should they stay, should they go? But if they're in terms of financial, getting paid off the name, image, and likeness, it makes it a lot easier for them to say, you know what, I'll stay another year and stuff. So college basketball, I think, is going to be the biggest that's going to receive a lot more. That's going to be more beneficial for them. And then college football, you're seeing that kids are the quarterback from Ole Miss trying to get a 6th year in because of the amount of money and the ease in terms of playing and getting that, still maintaining that college experience has incentivized them. So it's hard for them to go. So I think overall, there need to be a little bit more rules in terms of not how much they get paid, but just more of a buyout or a contractual, hey, if you leave this, then this money goes here, or you have to pay this money just to get them. Money talks. And if there's more money in terms of, hey, if you want to pull, CJ, the quarterback, from this, it's going to cost you this much and then this. I don't have a problem with that. That may slow some of this down from bouncing around. And I think you need to put windows in terms of when you can transfer and when you cannot. But that also should apply for college head coaches. It has to apply for college head coaches, head football coaches, basketball coaches, all coaches. You shouldn't be able to just leave anytime you want or at this weird end of season time, and then when now you got the playoffs and all that, and you leave and you're taking coaching staff and doing all that. I think there needs to be more modeled windows to when you can transfer, when you can leave to go to another school as a head coach or a coach in general, or as an athlete in general. I think Nick Saban, he talked a little bit about this as well. And he has 100,000 times more knowledge about how that eligibility windows work. But in my brain, listening to him, it makes sense to me in terms of putting those parameters around to where you only have but so much time as a college coach and as a college athlete. And putting that, I think this would be better for the NFL, for the NCAA, for the athlete, for the coaches. Fans are going to be, fans are going to be the fans. They're going to watch regardless. Good luck on them not watching football because is it an annoyance? Yep. But at the same time, this has been the name of the game for a long time. Now the quiet part is now out loud. We all see it. It's all out in the open. And I'm fine with it. I'm fine with free enterprise. Let the best team or schools. That's life. That is life. When they're done, the best programs, the best businesses got the best money, got the best funding. They want the best workers. They want the best business people. They want all of that as much as they can. So now you're learning that at a little bit of a younger age, but at the appropriate age. So it makes more sense as you being a professional in any sport that you're in. So with that being said, who are you? What is your mission? Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Again, in summary, transfer portal is a good thing. NIL is a good thing. Put some parameters on it. Put some contractual things and put some windows on it. I think it'll run a little bit more smoother as we continue. So with that being said, peace.